6:30. At this time, I'd like to call the Administrative Services Committee meeting for Monday, March 5th, 2018. Please call the roll.
Councilor Corradino.
Here.
Councilor DeMasi. Councilor Hill.
Here.
Councilor Tesoriero.
Here.
Councilor Wilmot.
Here. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of February 20th, 2018 committee meeting. Tesoriero, Councilor DeMasi.
Councilor Corradino.
Yes.
Councilor DeMasi. Councilor Hill.
Yes.
Councilor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Councilor Wilmot.
Yes. All right, moving along to old business. Is there any old business to discuss in this committee? Seeing none. Going on to new business under authorization. Item number 1, Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. requests permission to authorize the City of Oswego purchasing agent to seek bids for the 2018 paving project. Mayor?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a bit of a prop that I just used to select some of the streets. So I just have a quick highlighted map. Blue was what we paved in 16, green, or red in 17, and green's the proposed 18, just so you can visually see how much we've done, but also, seems like a lot of the paving has happened on the west side, so there's a considerable amount on the east side this year. So this will be in my office if anyone wants to take a closer look. So before you is a list. Thank you. Very nice. I believe the list is in your packet, and really how this list was developed, I asked, as you know, each counselor to submit some priority streets in your ward that weren't in very good shape. So once I got that list back, I drove the streets myself, and of course I viewed East Seneca Street, in my opinion, George Street, and Liberty Street, I thought were 3 streets that it was absolutely mandatory they had to get done just based on the condition of the streets. And then some other streets, Ontario from West Seneca Street to West Schuyler, Lathrop from West Oneida to State Route 104, Murray Street from Munn to West First, East Seneca Street from George to the city line, George Street from 104 to East Seneca Street, East Albany Street from Chestnut to Champaign, Washington Boulevard from 3rd Ave to Draper Street, and Liberty Street from West Cayuga Street to Lake Street would be my recommendations. You see what each street costs to pave, and then you see the total at $827,000, which is usually right in line with our CHIPS allotment from New York State. So we have to wait for the budget to pass, state budget to pass, to see exactly what that number is, but I would say that that figure is a good building block to work off of. So that's the plan I propose, and of course you're welcome to change some streets or add some and take some out, and if you'd like.
Any questions for the mayor at this point? There's one in the corner.
Bill, Mayor, no objections to what you're doing. Is there a schedule for Bridge Street to come out yet?
No. The 104, State Route 104, it's going to be done this summer. It's currently out to bid. The state has it out to bid. Once that bid comes back, which should be any day,
okay.
the contractors, person doing the job will schedule it, and then we know.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir?
West First will be done with Yes,
State Route 104, from where they left off last year, which I think was around SUNY. They're going to keep going, and they'll go at least to East Side Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you.
Yep.
Of course, last year, Mayor, we did anticipate, or we estimated, and it came out that we had extra money. So last year, didn't we do additional paving after the fact?
Last year what happened is, so what happens when you guys give me the streets that you submit, usually I go out and drive them and see which ones are the worst, and also see what makes sense. Try to keep it even on both sides of the river. Try to make sure every ward gets at least one street. And the longer the stretch of road, the cheaper it is. It's expensive for the contractor to pick up and go to another street. So streets like Liberty Street, Seneca Street, George Street, they're easy because they're one long straight shot. And then the amount of infrastructure along the street makes it more expensive. Well, if there's a sewer grate, if there's a manhole, that increases the price as well. What happened last year is we scoped it out using, I take the streets to Bob Johnson to scope up and provide me with a price. What happened last year is we did the scope and came up with the price. We sent it out to bid. The bid came back much lower than we thought, and that's why we were able later in the summer to go get a second batch of projects. That could happen. It all depends really on how the bids come back, of course. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or issues? Yes.
No, I just thank you for going in that board. I 100% agree with that. It's incredible. I didn't realize that it's so highly traveled. That people are taking it out for business. And the comment about it, that taking it out for business without paper, all these roads and so on. I'm like, oh, you won't see that by next summer. We don't believe it. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
I was going to ask about West First Street. I think
Oh, okay.
after the snow cleared, we realized it was in worse shape, I think, than we thought. Would there be any possibility of doing that in 2-block stretch from,
I mean,
or just email you?
well, it really depends on I'm trying to think of where you're talking about, but if it's potholes, I mean, once the weather breaks, and you can't patch potholes. I know we all get complaints, and it's, it should be an easy fix, but it's not, because you can't patch a pothole if there's moisture in the air or if it's below freezing. So streets now, where there's actual potholes, we can, when the weather turns, fill those and make the street drivable. When streets become cracked or eroding on the side, and you see the cracks going all the way across the street or down the street, that's when a street's beginning to actually fall apart. So if West First Street, if the section you're talking about is more of a pothole problem, I would say we can address that. Now ultimately, if West First Street's a higher priority for you or whatever,
No, thank you for the answer.
yeah, we can, but if you want to change the plan or insert a street that's more important or whatever, you guys are obviously welcome to do that, but I wouldn't go above 827. So a street would have to come out.
Counselor, did you want to make any changes to this? No? Okay. All right. Seeing no other issues or questions, any motion? Councilor Tesoriero?
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. Item number 2, Mark Tesoriero, City Clerk, received a request for approval of the 2018 racing schedule for Oswego Speedway, payment of $500 for the license fee. I don't see Mr. Tesoriero here, but I do see Tress. Would you like to?
Good evening,
Yeah,
counselors. Well, it's a pretty basic. We do it every year. It's the racing schedule. They did add Super Dirt Week to the schedule, so we won't need to come back to council to amend the schedule. And we'll probably be coming back for use of public space around Super Dirt Week for road closures. That's about it.
Good. Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Counselor Hill? Counselor Wilmot?
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. Item number 3, the Engineering Department requests the Mayor be authorized to sign change order number 1 with WCA Roofing and Sheet Metal Company Incorporated for additional work for the roof replacement project at the East Side Wastewater Treatment Plant. And I don't see anybody here from the Engineering Department, but we all got the information in our packet. Any comments or questions? Basically, what it's saying is the dollar amount of the contract that we've already approved would increase from $174,000 to $176,394, which is a total amount of $2,394 for additional work. So it's pretty basic. Any comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Councilor Hill? Councilor Tesoriero?
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. Item number 4, Justin Rudgick, Community Development Director, request approval for the mayor to enter into an agreement with Step One Creative for website maintenance. Mr. Rudge.
Good evening. This is a reoccurring agreement that we've had in the past with Step One. As you know, Step One designs the city's website, and we also contracted with them for the maintenance aspect of the website, which allows for updates to happen on a monthly basis, agenda information be published on the website, any sort of events. So we contracted with Step One to do that. So we received another proposal from Step One to carry us for another term, which is from this year to next year. The price remains the same, $500 a month, which is the same, so we kept it fixed. So we're just asking the mayor to be authorized to enter into the agreement with Step One again.
All right, thank you. Questions, Mr. Rudge, or comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Mr. Arroyo.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesorero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
And we need a resolution.
Should be it. I submitted one already, so.
All right. It's in the books. Item number 5, Thomas Kells, Commissioner of the Department of Public Works and Parks and Recreation, request a transfer of funds from the snow removal account to the garage equipment account for the purchase of a road patching unit. Mr. Kells, would you like to? Oh, no. We have a sub.
I'll take it. So we didn't include a number in the communication because there's a little context to go with it, and we actually wanted to get the council's direction before we reached out to get a firm quote on this piece of equipment. Since this administration took over, because we implemented what they call a Dickie Johns system that actually controls the amount of salt that's laid down. Before, the plows would drive around and salt would just pour out of the unit that dispenses the salt, and you'd just drive around, and the salt that made it on the road, and if it was too much or too little, didn't really matter. When we implemented this system, what it does is you can set it to drop a certain amount based on the conditions, and you can adjust that amount, and it helps to not waste product, but it also helps to ensure that the driver and the staff in the vehicle are laying down the proper amount. So that has made our use of salt more efficient. The brine solution that we implemented when we took office, that we apply to the streets before it begins and while it starts snowing, has helped to be a little more proactive with treating snow and removing snow from the roadway, which in the long run puts us further ahead and saves money. And then, of course, we've had a couple mild winters. All of those changes combined have helped us save approximately $300,000 off of our salt expense. So right now we have some salt left over that we've worked up over the last few years that we'll be able to hang on to for a while. So what I'd like to do is take the savings we've identified in salt and transfer those funds to purchase this piece of equipment, which is a road patching, pothole patching piece of equipment. Right now, actually, I think I was a city councilor. We bought a piece of equipment that you tow behind. It keeps the blacktop hot, and then they can shovel it into a hole, which is great, but it takes time. It takes, a guy driving the truck and 2 people behind shoveling this patch into the hole. What this truck does is it's similar to the pothole killer that we had in town in the fall of 2015, where it takes one person to drive, and it's this big boom comes out over the front of the truck and applies the patch into the pothole. It does a better job, and you're able to cover more ground much quicker. So I think that, especially with the conditions of a lot of our streets now, I think it's a worthwhile purchase that will definitely be used. I think the residents would say it's probably an appropriate purchase at this point, given the conditions of our streets. So what we'd like to do is get a general direction on how the council feels about that purchase. We, based on several options that we've looked, several different models we've looked at. Looks like anywhere from $200,000 to $225,000 could be the ballpark range of this vehicle. Once we get a direction from the council, the commissioner can actually then contact, this will all be done through state bid, the official purchase, but we can begin to get firm quotes based on how quickly we want to move. So it's a little hard to get the quote now because the commissioner calls and says, well, in 2 weeks we may have approval to buy this truck, and I'm reaching out now. If he can call, after getting direction from you, and he can call and say, look, if we were to place an order next week or soon, what would the price be? And by the council meeting next Monday, we can get you a firm price on how much that would cost. So just looking for a direction if that's something you're open to and want to move forward with, or we can leave the money in the account and buy more salt.
Mayor? A few here. Let's start here. Councilor Tesorario.
I believe that this is money well spent. It's my number one complaint from constituents driving the roads, not just in my ward, but the whole city. I think we'd be ill-advised to not go for this piece of equipment, seeing that the money that's there was allocated for salt. We've proven to do a better job maintaining the roads with the bare minimum as far as salt and the effectiveness of it. So I believe this is a good move. I think there's nobody in town that will not want to see these potholes repaired. Countless amount of complaints, countless amount of, like Linda said, I know her street is bad, but it started out that way. And this is going to prevent, like 10th Street down in my ward, it was paved 3 years ago, that's going to go away, and we're going to end up revisiting that again in another year or two. This machine will prevent a lot of that damage, and it'll sustain our paving projects that much further. So I'm voting yes.
Other comments?
Counselor? I think Mr. Tesorario basically covered everything I was going to say. And judging by the comments that I've heard from people in the first ward, I think this will be money very well spent.
Thank you.
I know that a lot of people are really saying about rubbing that like you're all the time, but they don't understand just how the equipment was. $45,000 for a month per month. This thing, you can do it in the new equipment in the winter time. Our whole
Anybody else? Yes.
Mr. Chair, questions I have is specifications on the machine that has been purchased. It's fine if you get something to do with potholes, but in most of the runways in the city, you've got these cracks all up and down. And the machine is not capable of handling that. That's the main thing you need to take care of as far as the freeze-thaw cycle that allows everything up and down. So I'd be cautious about what type of machine you're going to get and what it will do for the money that you're going to spend for it. And that would be my question.
Well, from comments that we had with Mr. Kells, I believe the machine we're looking at would not only take care of potholes, but also take care of the cracks. Is that correct? So it's a multi-function machine. Potholes and cracks.
I just want to get that on the record.
Thank you. Anytime. In the corner.
Again, good question for Tom, because I know he's qualified. No problem. When this stuff comes all over the top of the pad, the hose, the pipe, whatever it is, does it just plop it down in the hole? And air injector. Pardon? Air injector. Okay. Is it smooth when it gets down there, or does somebody else smooth it so it's, or does it stay in a pile?
Smooth out.
Okay.
By the operator moving the line.
Okay. Is this a multi-use truck, or is it just one use?
No, it's actually multi-use. It also will fill cracks. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you, Tom. And as usual,
Thank you. Anybody else? I would like to make one amendment or change to this. I think we should have some wording in there that says not to exceed a certain amount, as opposed to having it open-ended. The mayor mentioned it. It would cost anywhere from $200,000 to $225,000. Is that the numbers you were talking
I would
about?
go with that. I would go with a safe 250.
Can we make an amendment for the change?
Huh?
Yeah. So I propose we make it not to exceed $300,000. Well then, I changed my bid. Not to exceed. And I suggest we change it to not to exceed 275. Is that doable? I mean, is that the correct amount we're talking about in that account? 297? Well, Commissioner, what would you feel comfortable with?
If whatever money we don't spend in that account jumps into the general, so my recommendation would be 297.5, and if it's cheaper, then the money will sit in the account, and at the end of the year, bump back into the general anyway.
In this account, also, Commissioner, it was specifically for salt. We're all set for salt for this year. We have 3-4 more weeks of winter. Okay. And how about we change it to not to exceed 297.5? Ms. Ferrario and Councilor Wilmot. Can we have a vote on that? Change the...
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Yes. Counselor Hill. Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. And that was for the change. Now we vote on the actual resolution. I have a motion. Councilor Hill. Tesorio.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Yes. Counselor Hill. Yes. Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. Thank you. Item number 6, Caroline Anderson, Animal Control Officer, requests permission to send 2 people to an aggressive dog handling workshop to be held June 2nd through the 3rd, 2018 in Syracuse, New York. Caroline?
Thank you, Counselor. So I've been Animal Control Officer for almost 5 years, and this is the first training of this type that has been in the area. So it's an excellent opportunity for us to attend. I'd like to attend it along with the Assistant Animal Control Officer. Even if we get, 1 or 2 new handling tips, it can, mean the prevention of a bite or, the saving of someone's life. It's extremely reasonably priced for the 2-day workshop. It's $200 per person, which includes both days, and we won't require any sort of reimbursement for travel. We can just take the city vehicle up and back, and we won't be spending the night because it's so close.
Questions on this? It's pretty cut and dry since there's funding available in the budget. I mean, it's... How about a motion? Councilor DeMassey.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Yes. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. Thank you. Item number 7, Ken Sherville from Camden Group requests the mayor be authorized to sign a contract expanding the hours of a 1A operator for Camden Group at the City of Oswego water plant. And I believe the mayor would like to share his thoughts.
This, the amendment to the contract, what we'd like to do is increase the hours for the 1A operator at the plant to go from 10 hours per week to 20. I was talking to Ken about doing this anyway because we think we need to, and actually we're going from 10 hours to 15 hours a week, and we were planning on doing it anyway, but after talking to the Department of Health, the County Department of Health, they encouraged and recommended that we increase the hours as well. They didn't give us a firm amount of time to increase. They would just like to see an increase. We kind of plan on doing it anyway, so that's what this is. It takes the monthly contract with Camden from $4,585 a month to $4,840 a month.
Questions from the council?
Just additional coverage. So a 1A operator is really like the top dog at the plant, so to speak. So just right now, that person is employed by Camden Group and works at several facilities that where Camden's contracted. He currently spends 10 hours a week here. We just feel 15 hours a week would just have more coverage at the plant, and it is probably appropriate and he should be there anyway, because he needs that additional time to help administer the duties to the staff and spend more time there administering the lab and tests and working on the improvements that we're doing at the plant as well.
Councilor Hill.
So you mentioned the Department of Health. So are they encouraging us to do this for the safety of our residents, or just to ensure that we are, is it a precursor to a requirement that may be coming down? Or
No, I mean, this is a good example of, part that frustrates me is there were issues taking place at the water plant for a long time, and finally when the city started to rectify and address those issues is when, the Department of Health got involved to help us address what we already were working on addressing. So they're part of the conversation now, and it was a recommendation from them that we were going to act on anyway. Where the Department of Health is coming in is we're trying to improve communication between the city water plant and the Department of Health, because it was non-existent for some time, and when we're investing, making the changes we're making, we've just been bringing them into the fold more and communicating more than previously.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? And you're only talking about a little over $260 here, right?
Yeah, it's 5 hours a week.
45.85 to 48.40. Seeing none, can I have a motion? For one, yes. Councilor Tesorario. Councilor Hill.
Councilor Corradino.
Yes.
Councilor DeMassey. Yes. Councilor Hill.
yes.
Councilor Tesorero.
Yes.
Councilor Wilmot.
Yes. All right, I have several items that are add-ons for this committee. Fire Chief Randall B. Griffin is requesting permission to send one personnel to the NYSBOC Central Chapter 13th Annual Conference in Liverpool, New York, April 10, 11, 12, 2018. Funds are budgeted in A.3410.0460.
First of all, let me apologize for doing it last minute. This is actually a change to something that you approved several weeks ago. We couldn't get Chief Norfleet into the training then, so this is the same kind of training. It's a building safety instructor training, and allow him to teach our BSIs to maintain our level of training for building safety inspections.
Okay. Questions? Massey. Councilor Hill.
Councilor Corradino.
Yes.
Councilor DeMassey. Councilor Hill.
Yes.
Councilor Tesorero.
Yes.
Councilor Wilmot.
Yes. Last item. Fire Chief Randall B. Griffin is requesting permission to attend the Career Fire Chiefs of New York State Workshop to be held March 21st through the 20th through the 21st, 2018, in Saratoga Springs.
Yeah, this is a meeting. Actually, I emailed you about it, but seeing that we got something else on the agenda at the last minute, we got this. I got notification on Friday about this meeting, the particulars of it. So, looking for approval to spend the night before. Then there's an all-day meeting on active shooter with the Saratoga Springs Police Department and how they've integrated service. You might have saw on the Channel 9 how we're trying to integrate response, and so that's what this is about.
Any questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Councilor Tesorario.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes. All right, I believe that was the last item on the agenda for this committee. Any other comments? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Tesoriero, Counselor Hill.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey. Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to call the Fiscal Services Committee meeting for March 5th, 2018 to order. Please call the roll.
Counselor Hill.
Here.
Counselor Wilmot.
Here.
Counselor DeMassey.
Here.
Counselor Gozick.
Here.
Could I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2018 committee meeting? Counselor Gozick? Wilmot?
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Is there any old business to come before this committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Under authorizations, Thomas Kells, DPW Commissioner, received a request from Stephanie Lamb, Associate Alumni Director of SUNY Oswego, to hold an alumni event at Brightbeck Park on Saturday, June 9, 2018. Commissioner? Justin, do you have anything on this event? I know that you were involved in the beginning.
I mean, there was just an event with the alumni to really request the use of public space at Brightbeck Park. They've requested some other additional items, I mean, such as the bandstand and a couple other things. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's been, between DPW and the Special Events Committee, we're okay with the event.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Thomas Kells, DPW Commissioner, received a request from Mallory Rule for use of public space during a wedding ceremony on Saturday, June 23, 2018. Again, this is fairly straightforward. I did ask the Commissioner if he had any concerns with the event before the meeting, and he did not express any concerns. Can I take a motion?
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Number 3, Kevin Caracoli, City Attorney, has received a request from Oswego Health for use of public space by way of a permanent easement for property adjacent to 29 East Cuba Street.
Good evening. We're all familiar now with Oswego Health's application to transform the former Price Chopper property into their new behavioral health services facility. This request has come through the attorneys for Oswego Health. In your packet, you have a very condensed version of the site plan map, and if anyone is not able to follow where this, really it's just a triangular piece of property, is located. It is right about halfway in the picture where the crosswalk is that passes by the fire department and on to Fort Ontario, and there's kind of a crosswalk. You see it's almost like an X that marks the spot. That's that little triangular piece of property to the I guess that would be to the west of the walking path. That I'm sorry, yeah, there's a yeah, it's a little bit beyond that, but it's a triangular piece that juts to the west of that walking path. It's doesn't interfere with the walking path at all, but it's integral, as you can see, to the egress and ingress of the facility. What Oswego Health is proposing, as opposed to essentially purchasing that property, is to obtain a permanent easement for the use of the property, which essentially the city continues to retain ownership. From a liability perspective, there's very little, even though it's part of the road, it would be maintained and operated, plowed, all the rest of it by Oswego Health, they would have liability for any incidents that could occur on that part of the roadway. So this request was made by Oswego Health. They're asking for consideration. The city charter does provide that if there is property that's no longer needed for city purposes, that it can be disposed of, and that would include the granting of this easement. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. I did talk to the council for Oswego Health, and frankly told them that I thought under the circumstances that they did not have to be here tonight. I could certainly present what their request is. I don't see an issue with it, but again, I'll defer to the council on any questions you have.
The question is, why wouldn't we just encourage them to buy it? Why wouldn't we just, I mean, it'll be a forever thing, obviously. Is it that expensive? Is it?
No, but in the same sense, I think the piece is so negligible that the easiest thing from their perspective is to just simply obtain an easement, permanent easement for the use of that property. I could certainly explore with them whether they're interested in purchasing it. I can't imagine that the purchase price would be anything more than maybe a couple $100.
That's what I was thinking.
But
I just wanted to add that we also use that property quite a bit for classes at the fire department, and they've been very good to us so far in the transfer of the property to allow us to use it for fairs and safety days and things like that in the past. So I think this easement might help that relationship to continue to where we could use that property for things like that, overflow parking for EMT classes, safety days, that type of thing on the weekends when they're not using it. So
I would note also that as part of the arrangement with the planning and zoning boards, that there was the granting of essentially a walkway so that people that were accessing the footpath could cut across city property and onto the health services facility, as opposed to walking down the entire length of the road that's proposed. So that, that's another aspect. And if you see from this drawing that portion, although again it's just a little triangular piece, generally would spill out right at about the main entrance of the facility. So. Any other questions?
The vote was due.
Okay, I'm ready.
Are they paying taxes on any of this stuff?
They would not be paying taxes on the real property taxes. They'd certainly be subject to special
Sewer and water?
district sewer and water taxes, things of that nature.
Now, does that entail the whole parking lot out there?
It does. It will take the entire property. I'll show you the
No, I don't need, because they're looking at it, okay?
right. But what it does is it actually it recaptures some of that parking, that asphalt, and turns it into green space. So it's a complete transformation of that
Well,
parking.
it'll look better then, won't it?
Absolutely.
Then I can ride my bike there anytime I want.
You can do laps. Yep.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick. And we need a resolution.
Number 4, Justin Rudgick, Community Development Director, received a request from Oswego Little League to hold the 3rd annual Oswego Little League 5K Run Walk event on Friday, June 1st, 2008.
Good evening. This is a reoccurring event that happened last year and the year prior, so hence the third annual Oswego Little League run. They're not requesting any road closure, but in lieu of the road closure, they are requesting a police escort. And I talked to OPD, and they're fine with the police escort. So it's a pretty straightforward event.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Yes.
And we need a resolution.
Yep.
Number 5, Justin Rudnick, Community Development Director, received a request from Thomas Allen to hold the ATOM AMIC Invitational Event from August 10th to the 12th, 2018.
Good evening. Again, this is another reoccurring event that's been popular for the city of Oswego. It attracts anglers across the Great Lakes. So the only thing they're really requesting is access to the use of public space at the Flexo Wire site. We know that the chance of the Flexo Wire site potentially being sold later this year. So I did talk to the potential owner, future owner of the Flexo Wire site. So if the sale did happen prior to the event, they are fine with granting approval for this event. But in any event, we still, since it's city-owned right now, we're requesting the use of public space, and also for DPW to provide additional trash cans, which I've already contacted DPW about, and they just need access to the boat launch for the marina.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Number 6, Justin Rudnick, Community Development Director, received a request from the Oswego YMCA to hold the Oswego YMCA Dragon Boat Festival from August 10th to the 11th, 2018.
This is another reoccurring event. It didn't happen last year, but it has happened in years prior. So, I mean, they're trying to really pin down the consistent date. As you noticed, it does happen with the same time as the previous approved event, which is the Atomic Fishing Derby. So I did have a conversation with both Tom Allen, who runs the Atomic Fishing Derby, as well as the Oswego YMCA, and both of them agreed that there would be no issue in terms of coordination and logistics, because they are requesting the use of Breakback Park as part of their gathering, as well as using the inner harbor of the marina, and they would eventually tie into the inner harbor over by the dry docks. So typically on this event, both of these events happen, the primary day is August 11th, and so, I mean, the fishing derby happens, they leave first thing in the morning at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and they come back by 1 or 1:30. So really, from a timing coordination, there's no impact to the Oswego Y Dragon Boat Festival. And both of these are really interesting events that draw people to the city.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Last item, Justin Rudnick, Community Development Director, received a request from the Oswego City County Youth Bureau to organize and host the Children's Easter Egg Hunt on Saturday, March 31st, 2018, right back up.
This is another reoccurring event. Last year it was quite successful when it was relocated to Breakback Park. So the Youth Bureau is coordinating with the Kiwanis group. The Kiwanis are sponsoring the event. So really we're just requesting use of public space at Breakback Park to host this children's Easter egg hunt.
Not a question, but a comment. I did speak with Jennifer Lacerdo earlier today, and she made mention that they need approximately 4,000 eggs for the Easter egg hunt, and they're currently at 2,000. So, looking for sponsorship. Thank you. Problem.
Any other questions?
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Is there any other business to come before this committee? Seeing none, I will bring it to the again.
Counselor Hill.
Yes.
Counselor Wilmot.
Yes.
Counselor DeMassey.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
This time, I would like to open the Planning and Development meeting meeting, Monday, March 5th, 2018.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Here.
Counselor Corradino.
Here.
Counselor McBuerty.
Here.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 20th, 2018 committee meeting. Counselor Corradino or McBuerty?
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor McBuerty.
Yes.
Is there any old business to come before this committee? Okay, I'd like to open up new business under authorizations. Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. seeks favorable consideration by the Common Council for the review and adoption of Local Law Number 3 of 2018, amending Chapter 224 of the City Code regarding exemption of certain capital improvements to residential buildings.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a law we passed back in 2015. I actually proposed it as a city councilor. And the way it was passed in 2015, it needs to be renewed every 3 years. So I'm simply asking the Common Council to renew that law, but let's put in a revision that takes away that sunset clause so it doesn't need to be renewed. I just really feel like there's no real reason to have to come back every 3 years and renew it, and I think it gives residents a bit more confidence and projects the right message by just making the law permanent and letting people take advantage of it indefinitely. And if somebody else wants to repeal the law, which I don't know why they would years from now, then they can go ahead and do that. So the law, just to recap briefly, is meant to encourage home improvement projects and residential investment. One of the common complaints, I'm sure we all have heard at some point, is the hesitation that some people have because they feel that improving and investing in their home with an improvement project or some sort of expansion or renovation will only result in their assessment being raised because they pull a building permit, which results in higher taxes. So why would I want to invest in my home if the taxes are going to go up and I'm paying more taxes than I should already, is generally what we hear. So what this law does is takes the value of the improvement project and exempts that over 8 years from being fully taxed. So when you do a project, you have to come into the code office to get your building permit anyway. We have the forms available, the applications available upstairs. We also designed this cute little palm card to try to increase awareness, and we've distributed these to the Chamber of Commerce, some small business groups, the ORA. It was in the resident recruitment initiative packet that went to our major employers last week. So that's just trying to raise awareness. They'll come up, they'll apply, and if they meet the criteria, which is pretty basic and spelled out on the back of this card, then they will be in the program, and over 8 years, their assessment, generally speaking, their assessment will go up because the value of their home went up with the modernization or improvement project, but the value of the improvement project itself will not be fully taxed for 8 years. So the first year there's a complete 100% exemption. The second year it's 87.5, then 75%, 62.5, and it goes in those same increments until finally year 9 it's at 0 and the value of the improvement project is then fully taxed. So over time, if you do a major project, it can save you quite a bit of money from having that project taxed immediately. The requirements include the value of the improvement must exceed $3,000. The property must be used exclusively for residential purposes, and the home must be at least 5 years old. A new house, and 2 years later do a expansion or renovation or improvement project and get the tax break. The one issue that I'd like to bring up is the county has the same law, and they're currently renewing their law now. And I would encourage them to renew the law that they are prepared to do, but also insert the same provision, making it permanent so it doesn't need to be renewed every 3 years. And if the council doesn't mind, what I'll do is just jump right into the business tax exemption, which is essentially the same thing. The business tax exemption is the same exact format. The requirements are a bit different because it requires a minimum $10,000 improvement, and the length of the exemption is 10 years, but the value exempt the first year is only 50%, and then it goes down 5% every year for 10 years. And they're the main differences. And I would also encourage the county to pass that exemption, and I'd also encourage the school district to implement both the residential and the business, because when you have the three taxing entities in the city of Oswego, the savings, if the county, the city, and the school district enrolled in these two exemptions, would be more significant and meaningful and enticing for the resident who wishes to take advantage, not only for consistency purposes, but if they apply for the three taxes they pay, they'll save more money, and it'll mean much more, and I think will encourage more people to take advantage if all three entities pass this legislation. And there's no reason why they shouldn't. So, any questions?
The Chair, well, I fully support this. This is a great way to promote the make additions or improvements to the property. I'm just curious. I don't know if you know the answer to this, Mayor, since it might be more appropriate to ask Sudhiri, but you know over the last 3 years how many people took advantage of the residential?
Not sure, but it hasn't been not as many as we would like, and that's why we created this card, and we want to push it out, and we've supplied it to the ORA and some other organizations to get more people. Quite frankly, a lot of people, since we proposed this at the end of last week, I've heard from people who said, you know, darn, I wish you had that last year because I already did my project, and then I have the unfortunate, you know, duty to tell them, well, actually, we've had it. So I think with the code office structured the way it is now, I've made it clear that when somebody comes up to pull a building permit and they're doing a project that fits, I've made it clear that I want this program pushed, and I'd like the numbers to go up. I want to say 2 people taking advantage of it in 3 years, 2 or 3, not many. That I know of, anyway.
Any other questions, comments? Roll on one.
We have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I need a motion to, the Red Bull, so I need a motion on item number 1. Sorry. Councilor Cordino. Councilor McCrary.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrarity.
Yes.
I need authorization second. Mayor William J. Barlow seeks favorable consideration by the Common Council for review and adoption of local law number 4 of 2018, amending chapter 224 of the City Code regarding business investment exempt.
Counselor Tesoriero.
Yes.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrarity.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to open up the discussion. Mayor William J. Barlow Jr. requests discussion regarding changes to Chapter 58, buildings vacant of the City Code in order to institute a blight reduction loan program.
Thank you, Chairman. In 2016, the city received a $150,000 zombie grant to help combat blighted properties and abandoned and vacant properties. Since 2016, we've had to come up with ways and take some recommendations on how to spend some of that money. We're going to do a few things. Number one is update our code software and implement a vacant property registry. And I gave you guys, you should have a memo from me with all of this information in it in a packet. So we'll create a vacant property registry. We'd like to have 1 full-time or 2 part-time code employees to go around and register the properties, follow up on all the necessary paperwork, and supplement our code personnel with this grant money temporarily. And then the third issue is this blight reduction loan. And what this loan does, and what I'm asking for, is an amendment to Chapter 85 in our city code, which talks about vacant and abandoned property. So really not much changes. The only two amendments we're making to the law involve establishing this revolving loan, and I recommend increasing the fees associated with a vacant and abandoned property. What this loan does is allows the city to do repairs to a home if the homeowner is notified through the proper process, right? So if there's a serious code violation, and again, just talking about Chapter 85, so abandoned and vacant property. So there's nobody sitting in their home right now, that should be worried about the city showing up with a hammer tomorrow. So it's just vacant and abandoned property. The city in the code now, already in Chapter 85, is allowed to, after notifying the homeowner with repeated attempts and letters in the time frame that's given, if that passes and there's no work being done to the property, the city is already allowed to mandate and carry out the repairs needed to bring the home back into code compliance. And then that bill is sent to their to the property owner, and if it's not paid, it's charged to their taxes. So that is where I could see, maybe somebody saying, well, we don't want to, make somebody repair their home, I guess. That's already the law. All this amendment does is establish the revolving loan to go with that law. And what the revolving loan does is will allow us to tack on an associated fee or fine, just like what we're doing with the property maintenance violations. So if we currently under the law, we can have somebody, a contractor, do the work to repair a home, whether that's slap a coat of paint on the outside of the house or repair a staircase, whatever it may be. There's a value to the work, and then there's the associated surcharge like we talked about a couple weeks ago with the property maintenance. What I'd like to do is still have that surcharge based on the value of work, which if you remember, $1 to $99 is a $100 surcharge, $100 to $200 is a $150 surcharge. We're leaving that the same, but like with the property rules 2 weeks ago, we're adding that fine amount, which is $75 for the first time in every violation. It increases. So in order to keep it consistent, we're just going to implement that same fine amount with these code violations, and then that fine amount is what goes back into the revolving loan fund to keep it sustainable and going on and on with no recurring expense to Oswego City taxpayers. As part of this, $44,000 of that $150,000 is designated for seed money to get this program started, but it requires a 50-50 match. So if you're on board with this idea, we'll have to put up $44,000 to match that, so we have $88,000 in seed money to get the loan going. So that's one amendment. And just to try to get out ahead of some of the that I'm sure will be thrown around. A vacant building, because you can come up with scenarios like snowbirds, what do I do if the house is vacant and we go live in Florida for 6 months or 8 months, is that a vacant home? The answer is no. A vacant home means unoccupied and unsecured, unoccupied and secured by other than normal means, unoccupied in an unsafe building as determined by a code enforcement officer, unoccupied and has multiple housing or building code violations, illegally occupied, or unoccupied for a period of time over 180 days, which is 6 months, and during which time the code enforcement officer has issued an order to correct code violations. So I'm reading that right out of the city code. So, the idea that a property sits vacant for a month, or somebody is on a trip for 3 months or on a cruise for 5 weeks, or in Florida for 6 months. It just isn't, it's not what the code says, and it's just not affected by this loan or mandating work to be done. So the other amendment that I'd like to recommend is associated with the registry that is required already in the city code. When a property is deemed vacant or abandoned, within 30 days the property owner under law now has to pay $250 and register the property as abandoned or vacant. And then the second year, if it sits vacant for year 2, it goes up to $500 for that year. Year 3, it goes up to $1,000. Sits vacant for a 4th year, it goes up to $1,500. If it sits vacant for a 5th year, it goes up to $2,000. What I'd like to propose in order to discourage property owners being comfortable owning vacant and abandoned property, and keep in mind, I would say that most of the vacant abandoned property in the city is bank-owned, stuck in the foreclosure process, 68 West 5th, like homes that have caught fire and sit there. You know, I wouldn't say the majority of these situations is somebody owns a home that they never moved in and it's just sitting there, right? I think most of it's bank-owned or the landlord's just letting it go or whatever. So what I'd like to do to discourage people, property owners, banks, or companies from just sitting on abandoned and vacant property, which causes blight and detracts from our neighborhoods, is to make it more of a hassle and more expensive to own vacant, abandoned property in the city. So what I would propose is let's leave the $250, that initial registry, the same. Because you could get caught in the middle of that if you're flipping a house or you bought a house and you're going to do work on it next summer. That's October. It's going to start in the winter time. I understand that. And obviously, that's actually behavior we want to encourage, not discourage. So I would propose that initial $250 alone, but I would recommend let's double every year after that. So the second year, instead of $500, make it $1,000. Double the third year from $1,000 to $2,000, and so on down to the 5th year. And make it a little more inconvenient and expensive to sit on vacant, abandoned, and blighted property in the city. And it's the 2 amendments in addition to the $44,000 match. Any questions?
You're doing a hell of a job, okay?
Thank you.
What about Hammermill? Have we got a status on that particular blight at all? Does anybody know where it's at right now?
So I don't know. I know the port owned it, and I thought a private person bought it or bought some of it. I'm not sure. I know the city doesn't own it. And I believe they're using it for storage.
What do you mean, the aluminum ingots that are going out there?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it looks like hell.
Sure does. Now, if the port owns it, Miles, they'll be the first to tell you that they aren't they aren't subject to our laws, our code laws.
I understand what you're saying about the state.
We ran into that when we were trying to get it on.
I hear you. Don't worry.
Discussion?
I'm just curious, like, what happens when a house is in foreclosure? The bank, how?
That's the hardest. So the bank, you know, if they own the home,
Right.
they're supposed to maintain it just like anybody else. And that really is what this law is geared towards. Councilor Gozick knows this issue because that was the story behind 268 West 5th. It was in limbo between the property owner and the bank. The taxes were current, and they were paying to have the lawn maintained, but the home itself was falling apart because they didn't want to invest in the home. So, and that's what, when New York State did this grant, that was the focus of the entire grant anyways, mainly bank-owned and just property that sat vacant for years. So we treat the bank just like anybody else. And, you know, we send the bank letters. And usually once you apply some pressure to the bank, that's what makes the light go off, and they say, oh, you know, the city's getting serious about this. It's not this is more inconvenience, more of a hassle, and it's getting expensive to hang on to this, so let's get off it or fix the thing. You know, now, at least over time, it's because there wasn't a code enforcement office, and when there was one, there was no follow-up on the letters we sent. We just kept sending letters to make ourselves feel better. It was okay for the bank, and the red light never went off on the bank side. They were sending the guy to mow the lawn once a month, and, you know, that was it. So, you know, getting this pressure, increasing the fine amount, and having this action that's already provided in the code, but actually having a little money to get it started, I think will get their attention, at least for some.
Without business owners, businesses too?
Yeah, but vacant and abandoned property.
Right.
It's, you know, I want to be clear about that.
Snowbirds are not going to control them too.
Nope.
Discussion? See none? Is there any other new business that needs to come before this committee? See none, look for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Cordino? Councilor McBurney?
Counselor Testerero.
Yes.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor McBrarty.
Yes.